So today we had our first lecture at the Venture Catalyst 2026 program with Whitespace. And this program is going on for just until about mid-April. So about 8 weeks or so. And we're going to have a series of lectures talking about various aspects of building a company. And I thought I would maybe share some of the stuff that we learned. So today was really about concept validation. And, I'll break it down into some of the things that we discussed and it'll make it easier to kind of digest it. So the first thing was mindset. I mean, that's like the first thing you think about when you come up with an idea is, how should the mindset be around building a product and actually getting it to market? So what we discussed was that the customer is always at the center of everything. So when you're thinking about building a product, you have to be thinking about from a customer-centered point of view. Because at the end of the day, what really the focus is solving a problem. We're not trying to build features, we're actually trying to build towards a particular problem. So ultimately what we have to do is, how do they say, fall in love with the problem, not the idea. And that's always something that I've actually been guilty of because I think my idea is amazing, but then I ended up realizing that it's not really a problem that it's actually solving. So this is a very good thing for me as well. So I'm sure a lot of people can take away something from that. So the next thing is design thinking. And that's a very important concept because, progress isn't linear as a founder. And so the process is also not linear as well. So we need to think in terms of feedback loops. So design thinking is really about working in such a way where you make some movement in a certain direction, and then you loop back and you take some of the data that you collected from that output that you had and feedback into the building process. And you kind of have these constant feedback loops that occur every inch that you move forward. And this way, it allows you to move in a direction where there is some evidence supporting that, rather than just, hypothetically thinking that this is going to work or not. So the concept is sort of like divergent, and then where you collect a lot of data in the beginning. And then the next thing is once you've collected a lot of data, then you converge all these ideas and data that you collected into a set of decisions. And then this becomes sort of your process, your thinking process to make a decision. So oftentimes we find ourselves in a very kind of unpredictable situation. And this is sort of a framework to help combat that. The next thing is kind of validation basics, really. We think about building an MVP, and the MVP is really something that helps collect data. It's not necessarily your final thing or even something that you say, okay, well, we got an initial product. Let's see if someone wants to use it. It is really a tool used for collecting data. So how we collect data is we talk to users and we gather sort of data points. And we try to do that as much as possible, especially in the early days. So the goal here is really to dig deeper and sort of uncover pain points. And by using this MVP, you can actually have a conversation. You can get them to kind of open up a little bit because this tool or whatever it is you build as an MVP can really help with answering certain questions that you might be wondering about the customer or even the problem itself. So the key questions to answer really when you're trying to solve a problem is, what problem are you solving? That's one of the things that they mentioned to us that we have to figure out. I have to definitely solve that problem. That's a problem for me too. I have to figure out. But that's one of the things. Also, who is your customer? And the other one is why you and why now? These three core questions you want to say are very important, especially in the beginning. So you can really distill everything down into concrete decisions in the beginning when you're moving forward. And then also, what's a sign of a good problem? That's another concept we covered. So here's a few pointers that we discussed to look for. So the first thing is frequency faced. So that we want a problem that's frequently faced by the target customer that we're going after, in this case, the ICP. Or, if another aspect of this is it costly or time consuming, this problem for them? Another one would be like, does it affect many people? Or is a small number of people that get affected? Doesn't mean either or bad, but it helps you kind of realize what type of business you're going to be building in the future. And the other thing is this a problem that's essential to fix? Which means that is it a nice to have or is it critical to have? And that's a very important. I've heard that in many lectures as well. This always comes back to be a problem later on. So this is one important thing that I'll try to also think about. So what's the startup process? You build, you measure, you assess, you build. That's sort of the loop that you're going to go through. And the idea in the beginning is to use that along with things like the customer persona, which helps you kind of map out what this customer lives like, what their lifestyle is like, what type of problems they might be facing. And you collect some of this information. And then you also think about things like, the pain points and the pain relievers. These two things really have to go hand in hand, because if you're addressing certain pain points, we're going to be addressing them with pain relievers. And they really have to be able to be complementary to each other, because then you're really going to get to the most important part, which is product market fit. And in product market fit, what we've really done is we've validated the problem and we outlined a clear customer need. So this becomes something that where the product is aligned to a need that's actually out there. And it's really that's the goal of all of this work that we're doing in the beginning, is to make sure that we can make that alignment happen. So the final check that we're going to left with is, will people buy this? And also at the end is, are there any profit margins that are going to be left over? And are these going to be realistic? So after all of this, that's sort of the path that we move forward, is to make sure that there's a viability in the business sense as well. So that's what we covered today. And so I'll go ahead and share more as we kind of move forward through this program. I'm sure more people can benefit from this. And we'll see you next time.